Thank you very much. We're actually going to be going live on Facebook. So we're going to be on this oh no, apparently Facebook Live's not going to work. If you can make Facebook Live work, it does. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you all? Good. So who here likes speed? Put your hand up. We've got a few people who like speed. I'm not talking about the jobs. And who here likes competition? Okay, so that's a fair few of you. So motor racing brings together both speed and competition in the best way. Thank you. So my name is Dan Wells. I'm a professional racing driver with the Ford Chinese touring car team in 2016. So this is my car from last year actually. So I was born in the UK in 1991 and I grew up studying politics and economics. I was top 10 in the UK for those subjects, and one day I woke up and decided I wanted to become a racing driver. I did. And I spent 2 months pestering my father to allow me to start racing. And he was always like, son, forget it, it's too expensive, it's too late, focus on your studies. Then one day he woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and he said, son, come downstairs. So I went downstairs, sat in the conservatory, and he said, son, there comes a time in your life when you find something that you want to do, you find a passion, extreme passion, which if you really want it, you have to follow it. He said, if you're willing to chase it, if you're willing to leave no stone unturned in order to chase your dream, then he would support me. And I said, Dad, I'm ready for it. And so it began. So my father remortgaged his house and we started karting in 2009. And I took fastest lap in my first ever kart race, competing against guys who've been racing for 10 years, which had never been done before. I walked up to a major UK sponsor and I had to break into this VIP section of a car show. And I said, my name is Dan Wells, I've done a few kart races, I'd very much like you to sponsor me next year. And he stands there and he laughs at me. And he says, we only sponsor proper racing drivers. I was like, thank you very much, Graham, I will see you next year. Anyway, 6 months later, I went up to his program manager in Silverstone, the British Grand Prix track. And I walked straight up to him and I said, put me against your fastest driver in a Formula Renault. I'll pay for the test and I will be quicker than him. That's a terribly arrogant statement. But he said, and he's a very much headmaster type sort of person, he said, oh, well Dan, we're actually having an assessment soon, so here's my card and send me your CV. Now, I was in the middle of the Silverstone paddock. I sprinted 3.5 kilometres down to Club Corner where my dad was. And I'm running, I'm like, I've got this guy's coming, so calm down, what's going on? And I said what had happened. And anyway, we went from 40 drivers to 30 to 20 to 10. There was psychometric tests, physical tests, simulator tests. There was the world champion John Surtees doing the evaluation. All of these tests, and I topped every single one of these tests. Anyway, I came through, I got the funding to do Formula Renault, and I was in Snetterton. And Graham, if we remember the guy who I had walked up to, a year previous, and Derek was like, okay, introduce you to Graham. Graham gets out of the car, this nice black Mercedes, and he goes, bloody hell, you're that kid from last year. I said, yes, Graham, nice to see you again. Anyway, that was the beginning of my racing career. In that championship, I finished second in the Formula Renault UK Series. That was 2011, against a guy who has been backed and dubbed the next Lewis Hamilton. Backed by the McLaren Formula 1 team. I'm a great believer in chasing your dreams, and if you want to make it happen, then you can. Anyhow, I got screwed politically in the UK, quite honestly, and there was no more funding. Europe was very difficult. I'd chosen to start racing at a difficult time, just when obviously the market had crashed, and so I started networking on Twitter. And I became known as the Twitter powered race car driver. I raised about $20,000 US. So 268 people worldwide. I had 16-year-old girls giving me a fiver, anonymous guys giving me $1,000, and everything in between. Anyway, as a result of that networking, a Hong Kong Chinese race team got in contact. And they said, basically as a driver, you need to have money in order to progress through the ranks. You need funding, you need sponsors, whether it be founding money or from companies. And they said, oh, we'll back you a part of your budget if you're willing to come over. And I said, yep, okay, fine. Anyway, I moved to Hong Kong with about 800 quid. I signed a contract to pay about just over 100,000 euros for that season of racing. And I had nothing. I didn't have rent, didn't have food money, anything like this. Started networking. First I went to BNI, a business networking meeting, which is throughout Hong Kong. And formed my own company, Danwells and Investors, got investment, sponsorship, and the such like. And a quote which I'd like to share with you is actually from an article I wrote for Prestige magazine last year, which is how do you compete with those in life who you're expected to compete with, despite them benefiting from more real-time experience, more resources, and more advantages. Like I said, it's not complicated. The power of your race car may be limited, but the power of your mind is only limited by you, and that's a statement which I've always stood by. No matter how many challenges I've faced from a business perspective, sponsorship, human challenges, the amount of effort which goes into this, and from a lot of different people, and you're against serious competition. But I've always managed to come out on top. So here's a selection of pictures from my cars the last couple of years. The top is a British Formula 3 car. Below is a World Series by Renault car, which is basically just below Formula 1. Travels at speeds of 200 miles per hour, 550 brake horsepower machine. And then on the right is me very happy having won in Shanghai last year. So my whole career, 2012, so I went on to win 3 races in the Formula Colossa series. I then spent a year having to raise money, forming my company, doing all the business side of things. And I competed in the Macau Grand Prix in the Formula Masters series, and I took a second on my debut after a year of not driving. Following year, won races in the Formula Masters. I then made my debut in British Formula 3, Japanese F3, and the Macau Grand Prix. And then last year, I won 10 races in a row in the Asian Formula Renault series. Now, it was a really major shift. I started working with a mind and performance coach on, I think, beginning of April. And then I won every single race after having worked with her. So it's all in here. Here's a selection of those results from last year. First, pole positions, and fastest laps, and the such like. And as a result of that performance, I was selected by Ford this year to lead their Chinese touring car championship team. And there's 3 things which kind of embodies myself as a racer. I love to go fast, I love speed, I love racing. And I watch every type of racing there is, whether it be MotoGP, Formula E, Formula 1, touring cars, you name it. If there's racing on a Sunday, I'm probably sat on the sofa for about 13 hours finding streams on the internet in order to watch all these things. My passion for it is just unbeatable. Then secondly, business ambassador. Now to get sponsors, to raise just over $1 million US to basically drive around in circles, let's be honest, it's a bit challenging. You need to find sponsors and investors in media, people interested who buy into you as a person, as a business prospect, as an ambassador. And that's something which is one of the biggest challenges as a race car driver. And then thirdly, it's kind of a connected driver aspect, so use of social media. I was the first driver to really take advantage of Twitter with the funding. Without social media, I wouldn't have a career, quite honestly. LinkedIn, Facebook, the number of sponsors who've actually come through these, and even race teams themselves. It's a great tool to be utilised today. And the things which kind of stand for, grit, hard work, and belief that you can all be better than yesterday. With extreme sports like, and motor racing is extreme in every level because the technical aspects which goes into the cars. You've got maybe 500 people at a factory who are all working on their own individual job to give you a car, which when you see on the TV, you see a driver, and that's what you see. But there are thousands and thousands of people who are there, and they are just as motivated as well as you, or they should be. You need to motivate them to be as motivated as you to win. And then also helping others, being grounded and connecting. You need to be able to engage people from all different walks of life to buy into your story, to help you to ultimately stand on the podium. As I mentioned before, if you put your mind to something, you can achieve great things. And for me, the turning point in my life, I was actually a D and E grade student up until at the age of 16. 8 weeks before my exams, my GCSEs, I was not very clever, let's be honest. And I was actually motivated. My sister got very good grades, and she worked 5 years, 10 hours a day. She was amazing. I decided to work 10 hours a day for 8 weeks. Anyhow, I went from bottom of my year to top of my year in 8 weeks. And it was then I realised, I kind of did it to piss my teachers off, to be honest. I didn't really like them. I just thought I'd get one over on them. And it showed me, it's like, if you really put your mind to something, you can achieve it. And then, going from that, there's the understanding about the collective. It's all right being independent, but true success comes when you are involving other people, when you are not afraid, you don't have, let's say, a facade, you can work with other people interdependently, so that it's greater than the sum of its parts, you get a much greater gain. And then also contribution. This has been a key point for me, because when I started raising this funding on social media, it hadn't been done before, and I had some rather major moral qualms with it, because there's some great causes in the world. And driving around in circles probably isn't the greatest one, when you compare it to the diseases of famine, all these different charities. But I always said I'm going to use it as to propel myself to a greater standing where I can help more in the future. A couple of interesting I've put in recent learnings. The fact that not everyone's going to like you, and that's kind of a major thing, but you need to be okay with that. I mean, everyone has their own personality, and it's probably just like the teachers. It drove me to do something, be something much better. Be the duck. This is a really random one, but it actually does make sense. If you notice, as human beings, we might have, if we met someone and we don't particularly like someone, we have an argument, we'll remember it, and we store this angst in our body, and we go around and we're like, ugh. Well, if you see ducks, whenever they're annoyed at each other, they kind of waddle over to each other. They kind of have a massive fight in there, and then they just kind of swim off, and they're like quite happy. They don't go swimming off and go, oh, he's a right bastard. They just forget about it. They get rid of that energy, that negative energy, and it goes. So I say, be the duck. Really important. And then also wanting something too much. This is a really important point, because I really want this. Really want this. I want to win more than anything. But if you hold on to something so tight, you can actually push it away from you. So you need to be relaxed enough and have faith. Always act from a place of trust and faith rather than out of fear. Really important. And then also win-win. I suppose kind of the Stephen Covey consideration/courage. You need to have high consideration and high courage in order to have partnerships, relationships in business or personally, where both people are getting something from the relationship. Now, here's me in the middle preparing. I'm actually listening to Justin Bieber, believe it or not. It became a bit of a thing in 2014 where I got interviewed and they were like, oh, what are you listening to? And I said, oh, it wasn't actually Baby Baby, it was one of the better ones he's done recently. And I won the race. The trouble about winning the race, we're kind of superstitious as drivers. I had to keep listening to Justin Bieber. Anyway, from there. On the right hand side, you'll see this is me at the age of 3, pedaling in a little pedal car, dressed as Superman. So clearly I had great ambitions from a young age. Apparently my parents said I used to pedal it like three steps across the patio. But the patio was so small I had to pick it up, turn around and do the same for 3 hours. That's how simple it was. And this is me ultimately this year. So I mean, this is every driver's dream. Well, I say every driver. Every driver dreams of being Formula 1. Okay, I still dream of being in Formula 1. I still believe I'll get to Formula 1. Okay. However, there's, like I said, being the duck and going through processes where you need to be open to different opportunities. Anyway, this year I'm paid by Ford to race for the Chinese touring car team, to lead the team, bring the engineers, act as a motivating force for us to beat Volkswagen and their evil team in the Chinese Touring Car Championship this year, which we're currently doing, so looking forward to more in the future. And for me to get to this point, I mean, when I was 15, 16, I was stacking shelves at Waitrose, supermarket in the UK. So it's a very different thing having moved to Hong Kong, living in Hong Kong, being a racing driver. It's extremely different, but the benefit about, I say, driving, the speed, the exhilaration which you get from it, there's an untold amount of butterflies in the stomach before you drive, but when you get in the car, when you are sitting on the start line, you know, when you're sitting there in pole position, you've got the lights going on, you've got so many things to think about, you've got buttons on the steering wheel, you've got to get your tyres up, your brakes up to temperature, you've got to make sure you've got the crowd watching, you've got the TV watching, you've got your sponsors. You know, let's think, you know, a driver's career, 99%, probably 99.7% actually, I calculated in 2013, 99.7% of my time is spent working to get in a car. And when you get in a car, you need to be on like that. And if you're not, and actually in Korea last week I fucked up majorly and I crashed into someone else. You know, you do all that work, then you go and fuck up. And it's like, oh, well that was good then, wasn't it? You know, you've done 5 seconds on the run down the first corner. Thankfully, that's actually the first time in my career I've ever done that. It was a great surprise. But it has to come out in that point. That point in time, you need to be on like a flick of the switch. And you know, there's no greater feeling than winning a motor race, quite honestly. This really doesn't fit with what I was saying, basically. To be quite honest. Anyway, these are the charities which I work with.
Half Sky for Women.
So Half the Sky is actually, it's just become One Sky. It's a children's charity in China. And the Cambodian Children's Fund also work with them, and the Kids for Kids, which is a Hong Kong-based charity. This kind of feeds in where I said about the giving back previously, whereby you know, working with young kids, we bring them to the racetrack, we raise funds for the charity, the exposure. You know, seeing kids, for what I've done, I mean, quite honestly, wanting to be a professional race driver, I think is only second to wanting to be an astronaut. And you know, in terms of the finance you need, the people around you need, the connections, the skill, you know, it's a huge amount. And the fact that I've managed to get here, it's you know, I get emails from kids who are like, you know, I'm 18 years old, I'm doing this, I've seen you've done this, and you know, and I'm just there like, don't even bother. Quite honestly, it's like, you know, the amount of work there is. But I don't want to say that, because I was emailing drivers when I was 18 saying, I really want to do this, I want to do this. And they, well, most of them ignore me. But you don't want to, you want to inspire. With the kids, you know, no matter where you're, I mean, I came from, let's say, middle class background. We had food, we had a roof over our heads. And I've managed to get to this point. And the same as the kids who are down there, it's all about constant improvement, no matter where you come from. And it's great to see, you know, the kids who actually do go on to much better things. Anyway, that's the end of that one. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to the rest of the speakers this evening.
I mean, like the car racing, the boxing, yeah, the cycling, very crazy. Yeah. Yeah. I know there's some moment maybe you might enter a stage that may be very close to death. So I want to know whether you have such kind of experience that you're so close to death, and what do you handle that kind of fear? Or
Who's going first?
maybe car racing.
Close to death. I guess, yes, I have had one of those experiences. Motor racing is actually, contrary to public belief, it is actually very safe. The cars are built in such a way these days that they have a safety cell which is carbon, protects the driver. You can have a very serious accident and be absolutely fine and walk away. However, there was one time in 2010 I was driving at Donington Park, a famous UK Grand Prix circuit. We're just going down the crane of curves at about 140 miles per hour. And my rear suspension just collapsed, just broke from the mechanical failure, just collapsed on the ground. Anyway, it sat down on the ground, and you've got no control in this case, and it swung round. So I swung round, and there's gravel behind it. I'm like, okay, this is fine because I was going in the gravel backwards. But then it swung round again. And the trouble is, when you've got a car which basically has a floor on the bottom of it, if it goes in backwards, it's fine, but if it goes in sideways, it digs in from 140 miles an hour, and it digs into the gravel, picks up, goes round and round 3 times. So I remember just talking to the journalist afterwards. I said it's like being in a washing machine, and you just go round and round and round and round. And I landed upside down. You know, my helmet is just on the gravel, and I'm lying there in this car, you know, completely battered up, about 2 meters from a tyre wall. Basically, if I'd have landed 2 meters that way, that'd have been my head straight, you know, I'd be dead. So I guess that is my experience of, yeah, the Donington Marshals took 5 minutes to get me out of it, which I tell you, even a minute in it feels like an hour, so it was quite a while.
The way could be very dangerous and could get very difficult. So, and for normal people would think it's quite easy. So what keeps you guys keep doing it and still doing it?
Because we're crazy.
I love this. It's entirely true. I'll be quite honest. I think it's probably normal for us, but crazy for when you think of the tasks which you go through. But for me personally, the drive. I mean, the number of challenges which you go against, it can be like, bashing your head against a desk 20,000 times a day, and I'm not even thinking about cycling from bloody UK to here. But like I say, you have this end goal in mind. You always have that goal in your mind. You're always going for it. You're always striving to improve. And no matter how many times you're challenged, no matter how many times you're rejected, no matter how many times you may fail, you know that you're going to keep going. And if from the beginning, if you actually looked at, like, if our friend over here just looked at all the bloody things that you're going to be doing and calculate this, that, probably wouldn't start out in the first place. You just start basically, and then once you're going, you just keep going. And sometimes you need to kind of have a little look back. You'll have maybe a week where you maybe a bit in a lull, and you look back and look forward, and then, do I really want to? But at the end of the day, you always come back to it, and you always keep driving forwards, because no matter how many times you fail, you should learn from it, and you improve, and then ultimately you will be successful. So that's what drives me.